Hey guys, imagine living with ME/CFS for over a decade, struggling every day and feeling hope fade away. That was Mel Abbott's life for 11 years. She was pretty much housebound, battling severe ME/CFS symptoms and searching for anything that could help until she finally found a puzzle piece that set her on the road to recovery. If you're new here, I'm Raelan, back with another inspiring interview. Each week I share new ME/CFS and long COVID recovery journeys from people all around the world. Today, Mel from Auckland, New Zealand is here to share what has worked for her and hopefully inspire you to continue to take charge of your own healing journey. Mel, so excited to have you here today. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
So in this video or in this interview, what is one of the things, or what are you most excited about sharing, or what makes you really want to talk about your story?
The big R word, basically, recovery. Because when I was sick, all I wanted was to find somebody who got better from chronic fatigue. And, in 11 years of illness, I never heard a single recovery story. And I always said, if I ever find someone that's recovered, I'll just do what they did and I'll get better. And finally I did. I finally had a friend who recovered. So I went, right, I'll do what you did and get better. But that was 11 years of flatlining on no stories. And I've been well now for 15 years, but it seems that culture hasn't changed. You think of ME Awareness Day, for instance, and there's these terrible doom and gloom stories all over the newspapers and online. Oh, here's this person who hasn't set foot outside their bedroom in 5 years. And, it's like, what about sharing the stories of people who used to be that sick and they now feel amazing? That's the stories that people who are suffering need to hear.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. You would think that things would have, because in my mind, things have changed a lot because I'm doing recovery stories all the time. But when I do searches online and on YouTube, it's really hard to find long COVID recovery channels and even just a lot of ME/CFS recovery channels. There's, smaller ones, but the information isn't getting out there anywhere near as fast as it should. No. And for people, I want to say people like us, for it was a long time ago, but it seems like it's still the case for people today. But I was the same, sick for 10 years, and quite a ways into my journey, I heard about one person in Australia who recovered, and that's all I ever heard about. I'm like, okay, that's it. He did it. Some rando dude. Well, he's not random anymore, but it was enough. I'm like, it's possible to show me that it's possible, but yet so much of what you see online and so many of these groups, if you even talk about recovery, they kick you out.
That's what it's like in New Zealand. If you say I recovered, you get instantly kicked out of the groups. And I'm interesting to hear you saying that, but it's the same in America or Canada. That why are people being judged for saying they got well? Like, these are the people we should be wanting to hear from.
Yeah.
So it's just sad because it's keeping a lot of people trapped who are only hearing the negative stories and are therefore getting a stronger and stronger belief that there's no way to get better, when actually there's a lot of people getting better.
Yes. Someone told me a while ago a good hack is when you're searching for anything online, make sure you put the word recovery after it. Otherwise, it's just going to... It's not helpful information because people are recovering all over the world. So we just need to get more of these stories out. So you had a long journey with this. What did that look like for you?
Oh, it was horrendous. Yes, I got sick when I was 18. Initially, I had a head injury, but the head injury symptoms probably gradually got better over 6 months or a year. The things like the memory loss and that side of it. But everything else just kept getting worse and worse. So by 3 to 5 years into my illness, I was much sicker than I was at the start. By that stage, I didn't work the whole time. I couldn't. And I was sleeping for 3 hours every afternoon. And when I was awake, I was just lying on the couch. I couldn't really watch TV or read. So I just listened to talking books. And back then, audiobooks were all made for nanas in their 90s. And I had stories I wasn't the slightest bit interested in listening to. But it's all I could do to get through the day. And I'd sometimes be lying there thinking, I'm so thirsty, and my glass is just over there, slightly beyond my reach. I'd have to lean forward and pick it up. I'm too tired to do that. And so I wouldn't do it, and I'd put off going to the loo for as long as possible because I'd have to get up and walk 10 steps to the loo. And, that's how tired I was. And I had blood tests every 3 months, and my cortisol levels were always triple the normal healthy rate. And doctors would say, oh, that's not good. But there's nothing they could do about it. We were just monitoring a problem every 3 months for 11 years. And I kept a diary through my illness, not very often. I was too tired to write it. But I have it here. I photocopied some pages for you. And so I thought I'd read to show, just how terrible I felt about my illness. I wrote, I'm so, so depressed. I've been in tears every day for days on end, particularly at night, because I dread nights, because I'm so tired, but I can't sleep. I'm so depressed because I'm so sick. This is the worst patch I've had in 2 years. This is 5 years into my illness. It has lasted this bad for a month, and it's so intense. Back to being at home all the time, no phone calls, no reading, no walks, home alone all the time, no barbecues with friends, no going away, no reading books, no sorting anything out, constant aching all through my neck and my legs. I feel so panicky about how sick I am. Will I ever be well? How long will this terrible patch last, even when I'm trying to be so careful? I am destroyed, broken down, gutted, torn apart. The enthusiasm in my heart has evaporated and my life force has drained away. And that's what I was writing as a 21-year-old. And then this page, which I sent to you as a photo. There is no justice. Life is so unfair. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm broken. It was horrendous. When I was 21, I went to a chronic fatigue specialist, and she looked at me over her glasses and just said, oh, yes, you have chronic fatigue syndrome. There is no cure for that. You'll just have to manage your symptoms for life. And, I went home planning my suicide. It's like, if I'm never going to get better, why would I even want to stay alive? It's just horrendous.
Oh, my goodness.
And I've never been a depressed person. It's not like I had a natural lean towards depression. I was such a happy child. I was having the best year of my life at first year uni when that injury happened. And, so to be that depressed was only because I was so sick and couldn't see any way out. There was one other bit that I thought was really relevant. It says here, I have nothing to live for because there's no way out of this. If you're miserable about your job or your relationship, you can choose to change it, but you can't change illness. I feel so totally out of control and helpless. And that's how it felt. There's no way out of this. And that was, for me, the worst thing about being ill. There's nothing I can do, and the doctors are telling me there's nothing I can do, and the physios, everyone's telling me there's no way out. And for me, that was the worst suffering of chronic fatigue, was the helplessness and the fear of what if this is the rest of my life.
So how did you keep going through all of those hopeless moments?
The thing that kept me going was, I can't kill myself and upset my mother. That was the thing. I was like, I can't do it to my mother. I felt like I could do it to everyone else. Like, they'll manage, they'll be fine, they'll cope without me. But I can't do it to, my mother and my grandmother. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to stay alive until they're gone. And after that, I'm freaking out of here, But that was, I knew I was going to be stuck for a long time. But that's what kept me going, was not hurting my mother.
I empathize. I had something similar because my mother had CFS and she ended up taking her own life.
Oh.
And I have to put a massive suicide trigger warning at the beginning of this video. And I'm an only child, so I'd always think, I can't do this to my dad. Like, there was 3 of us. Is he going to lose his wife and his daughter to suicide? And it was...
It's intense to lose your mum over it.
Yeah, it is. And it's, hard conversations to have, but, often in an attempt to be cheery and put out joy and hope, which is important, we kind of gloss over how horrific this is and what people go through and the suffering and the people that we're losing to this illness.
Yeah. And I mean, thank goodness I didn't kill myself, because I have such an amazing life now. It's like, it was so lucky I didn't, but it's all because of my mum and my gran. So all credit to love being stronger than pain.
Yeah. And I'd always think, and it was never, and I think probably most of us or all of us, none of us want to die.
No.
But the suffering has to stop. It's like, I don't know how many more days I can go through this kind of suffering.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so important to find whatever it is, whether it's borrowing hope from somebody else through watching recovery stories or finding those people in your life that you are living for. Because I, I don't know what percentage of the people I've interviewed have told me that they had moments in their life where they contemplated taking their own life, but it's high.
Oh, yeah.
And then they're all now past this and having this great chance at life again. So such an important one. Things can feel so hopeless, especially if you spend too much time on Reddit. But it can really, there's so many ways out of it. It's such a whole different world right now. There's so much information and every day. So,
and that's something I present at the New Zealand National GP Conference. That is my number one message: is you've got to stop telling people they're incurable, because it's devastating and it's not even true. You know, there are so many people getting well, and you are only going to make people sicker if you give them this false information. And I have such a passion at getting that incurable message erased, because it's, you know, it's been 75% of my clients have been told they're incurable, and yet around 80% of them are recovering. So there's a total mismatch in the messaging that people are being given.
Yeah, and it can be really hard to hear things that go against your own belief systems. And, you know, there's a lot of people, understandably, that are really bought into this message of no recovery because they are very seriously ill. And I think it can feel like it diminishes or invalidates their experience if other people are recovering. Well, they clearly didn't have what I have because I'm not recovering. So that's what this illness is. You had something else. And it's scary, and it's a really hard thing to challenge deeply held beliefs that you've had for a long time. But I think for people watching, if that's where you are, a really important first step is just challenging that and starting to shift it, which you're clearly doing if you're watching this video. So high five to you.
I reckon.
Yeah.
People say an illness like cancer, I mean, no one would argue that cancer is not real and it's not serious.
Yeah.
And yet many people do recover, and that doesn't invalidate that someone else has had a real serious illness.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand is why somehow ME, CFS, and long COVID are different to that. But if we have any recovery stories, that invalidates that it's real and serious. You know, it is real and serious, just like cancer is real and serious.
Yeah, and people recover from terminal cancer and all sorts of illnesses. You know, there's books out there just really covering just all the people who have recovered from incurable things. So yes, I hope we've driven that home right now. In the comments, let's, you know, give us a high five. We all know recovery is possible. We're not giving up. We're not letting that shape our journey. So in that amount of time, you must have tried a lot of things. So what kind of things didn't work for you, did work for you? What did that look like?
We spent over $100,000 in treatments for me over the course of 11 years. We tried everything we could find and nothing worked. I mean, I could give you such a big list, but there's no point. You know, it's just, we tried anything we heard about and nothing was working. And then suddenly, my friend who'd been sick the same length of time as me and tried everything I'd tried and got nowhere, she suddenly got better. And it was all based on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so I just did what she did. And the change was just so fast, having flatlined for 11 years. Right from day one, I stopped my afternoon sleeps. You know, I'd had them every day for 3 hours, and they just stopped. Now, sure, I was still very tired, but I managed to just change that big pattern in one day. And by 1 week later, I went off to Europe and started a 3-month tour of Europe. And it was exactly 2 weeks later that I was in Rome. I mean, in that first 2 weeks, I was working really hard. I was practicing every technique I'd been taught over and over and over to keep rewiring my nervous system, to keep calming my stress response, to keep shifting out of faulty thoughts, faulty beliefs. I was making lifestyle changes. I was doing everything I'd been told to do. And every day was improving, but I was still working hard. And then suddenly, 2 weeks later, I was in Rome, and we walked into Pantheon Square, and there's a great big clock. And it was 2 p.m. I said to my friend, "Oh my goodness, it's 2 p.m. And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "But we left the hotel at 9 a.m. He's like, "Yeah. And we haven't sat down. I haven't felt tired. I haven't needed to do anything about fatigue. oh my gosh, this is it. I'm all better. And we stopped to have ice cream to celebrate. And I've shared that photo with you of my moment of realizing that's it, I'm all better after 11 years of flatlining. And it was the most amazing feeling. I'm out the other side of this. And it's now, last year was the 15-year anniversary of my recovery. And so I had a party, had all my clients along to celebrate, because many of them are experiencing awesome anniversaries now too. And I shared what I wrote in my journal at the end of my course, and I've shared that in your folder as well. And what's changed in the last 3 days? And I just wrote energy in capital letters, and these, I have more of all of these things. And and it was just amazing to feel that change happen so fast. I just felt like the brain fog was gone, the aching was gone, felt like energy was just flowing through my body, and everything was so calm. I had a cortisol test and it was bang in the normal healthy range, having been triple the healthy rate for every 3 months for 11 years, and it was just back into normal healthy. And so at this 15-year anniversary party, I had my original list of 8 goals of things I wanted to do when I was all better, and I showed photos and movies of all of those moments. Here's when I did that, here's when I did that, and celebrating right through to the final goal of being to have a relationship and get married. And I finally got married 6 months ago, so I just made it before the 15-year anniversary. But, there were goals right from the start of, go skiing in Europe, and, so there were so many things. And it's been the most amazing 15 years. I've traveled to 41 countries. I've, helped over 3,000 people get well themselves. I've developed my own program, The Switch, which is just changing lives. And I've presented at GP conferences and helped shift into this way of knowing that there is a way out. And, I've just had the most amazing time. And, I could honestly say that I've had a better life because of having gone through that struggle, even though I would never wish it on anyone. It's created this incredible life for me of freedom and joy at having health and just valuing every day that I can go out and live a full life and do fun things. So it all turned out fine in the end. I wish I could go back and talk to that poor little 21-year-old who wrote this and just say to her, don't worry, it is going to get better. You are going to be absolutely fine. I think that whole illness would have been so much easier to bear if I'd known it's going to end.
Do you think, if you could go back to yourself then on those worst days, those really hopeless days, and told you all the things that were to come in your life, do you think you would have believed it?
Yeah, I think I would have, because I really wanted to believe it. And if I could see a future me who's like, look, it is going to be okay. Look at me. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. I think I would have believed that. And I wonder if that would have hugely shortened my illness. Because if I knew I was going to get better, that would have helped calm me down, because a lot of my panic was, oh my gosh, this could last forever. So I think if I'd known it was going to get better, probably would have got better faster than I did.
Yeah. Yeah, the depression and the stress is intense of
Yeah,
that hopelessness and the struggle.
totally.
Yeah, I felt so hopeless on my journey, and because my mother never recovered, it was just, it's a really hard thing for me to envision a future
Totally.
like that was waiting for me. And the future I was envisioning wasn't even anything spectacular. I just wanted
Yeah.
my regular old boring life back.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another diary entry. I don't want all the big things I've never had yet. I don't know what travel is like or marriage is like. I just want to be able to hang out in the uni quad with my friends and go to parties.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, really incredible. So it's just a really important message that whatever you're in, whether it's illness or a bad job or a relationship you're not happy with, or just all of these things, to remember that, so much can and is waiting for you in your future, and things can dramatically change, even though in that moment it feels like it's going to be like this forever.
Mm,
Just
totally.
so you talked about NLP. What exactly does that look like in practice?
Well, NLP is a very wide-reaching arena, and it's used for so many different things. But the main principle of NLP is to model excellence. So you find a whole lot of people who are excellent at something and a whole lot of people who are rubbish at something. So in this example, people who are excellent at health, people who are rubbish at good health, and you observe what is each group doing at a subconscious level, and how can we then teach these people how to do these behaviours in order to create the excellence that they're seeking. So that's the sort of principle of NLP, which isn't necessarily only used for health. But when I was developing my program, The Switch, I was looking at exactly that. What do people who are excellent at health do? And what are the barriers to that for these other people? Were that number one is calming the stress response, which I've heard through a lot of your interviews that, when you're in a state of chronic illness, your stress response is so elevated, and that causes such depletion to all your other body systems, immunity, digestion, hormone balance, everything is being affected when your stress response is so high. So we need to calm that down so that energy can start flowing back into all those other systems. So that's number one. And then looking at all the way that the brain wires up, and that when we have habitual thinking patterns that are looping into illness, that sets up a whole pattern of neurology through your body. So we need to interrupt all that neurology, which I've heard some of the interviews talking about brain training. And I guess in The Switch, that would be that aspect of it, is looking at how to shift all of those neural pathways to create a brain that operates the way a healthy person's brain operates. And then so that's all on day one, and looking at the role of emotions in health, because emotions are a huge part of health. So many of my long COVID and chronic fatigue clients, we can trace their illness to a specific emotional event that got basically trapped in their body. It's like trauma sits like a block in your body. So the whole of day 2 of The Switch is about how to access your body memory to trace back all the way to what was the original event that caused all this. And it's often not what people think. They go, oh, well, it all began when I got long COVID on the 15th of March last year. But it never began then. Sure, they caught COVID and got sick. But the reason they got so sick was because something else had already happened that had put their body into a crazy stress response, got all this trapped emotion and so on. And when they release all that old stuff, then the body can calm, and then the immune system can heal from that post-viral situation. So clearing the old emotions, I think, is really important. And then there's lifestyle. So looking at how can your lifestyle support or hinder your recovery. So diet, exercise, all these different factors. There's a whole research called the science of well-being, looking at what are the key pillars to well-being that are required for people. And obviously, when you're sick, you can't just leap into exercise. Obviously, you've got to be very careful that you don't overdo that. But at a gradual sort of way, being able to build that up as the stress response calms down. And then the final area is beliefs. So looking at what beliefs are you holding that are limiting your ability to recover. And there's so much negativity in the long COVID and ME communities that does keep people very trapped. So looking at what beliefs need to go to allow you to be able to trust having this wonderful full recovery. So those are the main pillars, as I see them, of what needs to happen in order to create a whole system of your body that supports wellness and moving forward.
This can be a lot for people to absorb and internalize and believe, because it goes directly against what most of us were taught about health and illness. And a lot of people feel that looking at a mind-body connection or brain-body nervous system kind of negates or diminishes or invalidates the condition or says it's not real. So what's your take or your explanation on what's happening with that?
Yeah, it's so important to address this, because I hear that a lot. If you're saying you can fix this illness with your mind, you're saying it's not real. Absolutely not true. I had ME for 11 years. I know it's real. You don't get cortisol levels like I had without having a real illness. But I see people come to me for rheumatoid arthritis. Is that not real? They can still recover. People with conditions that there's really measurable physical stuff, and they still can recover by calming their stress response, shifting their thoughts, releasing their emotions, making these diet and lifestyle changes. Because I don't separate mind and body. Every illness is both. Cancer is supposedly a physical illness, but how many emotions are part of cancer? There's even mainstream research showing that having high anxiety and having emotional suppression is linked to cancer. And then, of course, all the emotions that people experience once they've been given that frightening diagnosis, that doesn't aid recovery when you're escalating like this because of what you're being told. So, and then an illness like anxiety, people might label that as a mental illness, but it has a lot of physicality to it. It has very elevated cortisol, racing heart, sweaty palms. So to me, every illness is mind and body. And when you make changes to either part of that, you can affect the whole.
Yeah, there's so many examples. Not good gut health can cause anxiety, can cause depression.
Exactly.
I read a book a while back, maybe you know the author or someone watching, throw it in the comments. I can't recall his name, but he was cycling and was run over by a car and he broke his back in multiple places and was told he'd never walk again. And just through mind-body work, he fully recovered. So does that mean his back was never broken? We have x-rays to prove it. So yeah, we talk about it a lot, and I feel like we're in a place where we're past it and we don't need to keep hammering it home, but clearly we do, that there's a barrier between our head and the rest of our body, and that we have autonomic nervous system and these things that work synergistically and all together, and the vagus nerve and the gut and the brain connection, like it's not separate, and we're not like a car we're trying to fix with like a broken radiator and you just look at that one piece. It's just
Absolutely. And I still 100% believe that I had a real physical illness for those 11 years.
Yeah.
But I was able to put my body in a state where it could do its own recovery by creating the environment of calmness and balance that it required in order to start running itself properly again. So,
that was absolutely my recovery as well. I didn't fully understand the mind-body component, but I just knew that our bodies are excellent healers under the right conditions, and they're designed to repair themselves. They're designed to thrive. So everything I did was just, how do I help my body thrive? And I didn't fully get it all then, but a lot of that just working on stress and meditation and therapy. And, I talk about a lot, like in gradually increasing activity, but for me, that was about learning safety around activity more than building muscles, because what I was doing wasn't building any muscles. It was just slowly getting over the fear. And we become experts at becoming unwell because we get so scared of the world, and it's just everything equals danger for us. And there's
totally. I think that what you just said really resonated with my illness, is that danger in the world. It felt like, I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back, I was retreating further and further into my house because it felt like nothing is safe out there, because every time I try to go out and do something, I get 50 times worse. I try to go to a party for half an hour and spend 2 weeks in bed, or I go for a half an hour walk and I'm exhausted for a week. And so life gets smaller and smaller in my efforts to try to not cause adverse effects. But then, the more that you spend your time just lying all day on the couch like this, and Mum would say, "Do you need anything?" I go, "When you talk in a voice like this, and you sit like this, you just get me horrible tired, So I was sort of ended up creating and maintaining all of that fatigue by the body language and the way that I was being, because I was scared to do anything else.
What is your experience and all the people that you've worked with and everything you've learned over the years? Because there's a lot of debate because there's a lot of people who are recovering using these sorts of approaches that we're talking about. And then also there are people that are like, well, I needed to address my heavy metals or my mold toxicity. So do you think this is enough for most people, or is there just a whole spectrum of things like ME, CFS, and long COVID? I'll need to figure out where they fit.
Well, among my clients, I get all my clients to fill in feedback forms before, 2 months after, and 1 year after the course. So I am following, and I follow everyone up with lots of follow-up calls as well. So I know that round about 80% of them are getting really good results. About 3% get no improvement. So it's tiny, tiny numbers, and nobody's getting worse. I just don't see that happening. But most people get what they need. Some people, get a sort of 40% improvement and don't, kind of So they're in that 20% that, aren't getting as much result as we were hoping for. And so then those people, I'm saying, well, maybe you should, go and address these other things like you're talking about and see if that's a barrier. But for most people, when you calm your body, your liver works better. And when your liver works better, it clears the backlog of any toxicities and moles and anything else you've got. So for most people, I think you have an amazing organ inside your body to do that job for you. But yeah, there are some people that I haven't got good results with. As with any technique, nothing works for everyone. And sometimes, we can see that that person just never practiced the techniques enough, or sometimes, they had a major life trauma, like a parent dying or something a few months after their course, and that just threw them off, which is understandable. I mean, how can you recover when you're being thrown into the next wave of crazy, stressful events in your life? So there can be circumstances that get in the way. But yeah, I think, if people should do whatever works, if addressing mold or mercury helps people, then yes, do it.
Yeah.
When I ran my own recovery project series, there was a person that said float tanks really worked for them, and someone else said that supplements really worked for them. I'm like, well, great, whatever works.
Yeah, we see across the board all sorts of conditions that putting your body in that healing state helps you to recover from all sorts of things. So there's going to be, not like a black and white situation where it does or it doesn't help. And also, something I always noticed is that so many people are doing massive batteries of tests. Like they are testing everything in their body and everything's coming back normal. So when that's the case, that feels like a good first indication that going down this mind-body route could be a really good path for you. If tests are coming back and showing you have, heart disease or like things that need to be addressed, then of course that's a good place to start. But time after time, I talk to people and they're like, everything's normal. Every doctor is giving me a clean bill of health. I don't understand why I'm so sick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I never had normal blood tests because I always had this crazy cortisol stuff going on. So it was clear something was up. But a lot of my other tests, the other blood tests were all looking fairly okay, so there wasn't a whole lot that was showing up outside of this crazy cortisol. But that alone is a sign of how badly stressed my body was. I had a resting pulse of 118 beats a minute when I first woke up in the morning before I'd even stood up,
And, I've interviewed multiple doctors on this channel now who talk about this approach that you're talking about. And they're like, the science backs it. The research is there.
Yeah.
Like in the last 10 years, we've had dramatic changes in our understanding or advancements of how this all works. But it takes a really long time for this to trickle down to everybody else. And even medical professionals who are in the know and staying on top of the research, they say they have to be very careful in their practice because it's not mainstream and they'll get pushback and critiques even from other doctors, never mind patients. So it's a really tricky situation where there are many things that we know now as fact, but it's a very small amount of people that are reading those papers and looking at that research and really understand it. So you can see how it's a hard thing to wrap your head around when you go to see most doctors and they're like, oh no, that's garbage.
Well, in the 13 years I've been in practice in New Zealand, I've seen a huge shift in mainstream medical arena. Like, I am so welcomed at the GP conference. I've been voted best speaker out of 200 speakers 2 years in a row. Like, they are ready to hear this information. And in Otago Med School, which there's only 2 med schools in New Zealand, we're a little tiny country, but Otago Med School now has a whole unit on mind-body. And the associate professor has an interview with me in that module, and he actually says, everything you teach is totally in alignment with modern neuroscience. You're just an early adopter who's packaged this up in a way that people can actually use. And this is what we need our young medics to know before they're graduating. So, I'm really encouraged to see that shift within mainstream. It's really good. I don't know if that's happening in America and Canada, but it is shifting in New Zealand. What's not shifting is the support groups in New Zealand. They're still just as negative as ever, but the doctors are certainly a lot more open.
Yeah, I interviewed a doctor in the UK a while back. His name is Dr. Will Bostock. I can link it up here if people want to check it out. And he runs a long COVID clinic in the UK. off of this approach and has really good results. And he went to a massive long COVID clinic recently, and the mind body approach wasn't even brought up once, like from all the speakers, the whole event, not so much of a word. So I think it's changing. It sounds like New Zealand. Going to New Zealand, very impressive. And you do hear, I'm interviewing doctors in the US who are embracing this and aware of it, but it's very small pockets, I think.
Yeah, in little countries like ours, you can be early adopters, I think. It's,
We're going to look back on this one day and it's just going to be, I don't know, before people thought the world was flat. Like, it's just going to be, of course we understand this, but it's a little bit frustrating to be in this place where there's something that could help so many people, but the information and the understanding just isn't out there as much as it needs to be.
Totally.
So what sorts of support do you provide for people who are going through this? What does that look like if they come to work with you?
So it starts, there's a free webinar, free 45-minute webinar that people can sign up for on my website, empowertherapies.co.nz. And then they can sign up for a 2-hour webinar package. So there's sort of gentle progressions to get some intro and some info on this. If they want to work directly with me, I have my 4-day program, The Switch, which is available live in Auckland or is available for online attendance. It's still all live. I mean, it's not pre-recorded. It's still full training with me. But it has been amazing since COVID that now the world is so small and people can attend my programs from anywhere in the world, dealing with some pretty crazy time differences, of course. We're, not in a good time zone for many people. But I've had clients from all over the world who have attended my program online now. And around about 80% of them are doing really, really well and are so happy. Right last week, we were filming the whole program, and there will be a webinar version of it, which will take place instead of 4 consecutive days, it will be over 6 weeks, so that people who are too sick to be able to attend 6 hours a day for 4 days can do the program much slower and in their own time and so on. So that will be available within 2 or 3 months as well. So there's so many different options and different price points and different amounts of support and help from me.
This is so incredible. This was all happening while I was sick, and I had no idea. Like, I just didn't think anything existed out there. And my head always explodes when I hear about things like what you're doing that I could have had available. And a big part of it is that I just gave up because every time I poked my head into the ME/CFS community and the literature, it was so depressing. I just sort of no. And that was one of the things I'd go back and change if I could. So how amazing that you've been out here helping people, so many people for so long. This is just really wonderful.
Yeah. It's my life passion. It's what I'm meant to be doing, is just giving people back their freedom. And I called my company Empower Therapies because it's all about empowering people to be able to be in control of their own health and life. But you don't need a magic pill from a doctor. I mean, it doesn't exist anyway, but you can learn what to do to run your own health and life.
Yeah, and we need so much of this because the expertise you've gained from your journey is something that a teeny tiny fraction of the people in the world have. So really amazing that you're making it accessible to people in so many different ways and different formats. And of course, this will all be linked in the video description. So people watching, please just take a look. Take a few seconds to look at what's there. Really great stuff. Very exciting, Mel, all that you've learned, how far you've come, the nightmare you endured, but you found a way to keep going. And then you've living this over the top amazing life. It's so nice to see. And I think so hopeful for so many people. I always think of my mom, like, I wish she could have seen this stuff. I don't think she believed that there was a whole life waiting for her or that she could turn things around in a few months or a few weeks. But oh my goodness, like I said, I have such a backlog, waiting list of interviews for people to share their story because it's happening. And most people don't even want to share their story. Those are just the ones that want to speak out. There's so much reason to be hopeful in so many ways past this. So yeah. Really.
Well, I love to share the hope of recovery. I was so excited to get to meet you and talk about recovery and inspire. And it was great fun.
All right. Thank you so much, Mel. Thank you to those of you watching. What do you think? What have been your biggest insights on your recovery journey? I love how much we learned from each other. What stood out to you about Mel's story? What else has been helpful? Let's just keep the conversation going. And thank you for being the amazing, beautiful people that you are. Keep at it. Don't give up. You've totally got this. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a ton out of it. And I hope to see you in this next one that I've queued up for you that I think you will really like.